So we'll see how this goes. So today's topic video is about Pi as a digital civilization, where time is the currency of that civilization. Now, when you think about people who talk about fiat and gold and all of these stores of value and currencies over time, you have to find and build a system that is different than all of these systems that came before it, and also it needs to be able to basically fix itself and future-proof itself. And that's why blockchain technology is so important. But what I come across a lot when I hear Bitcoin maximalists, when they talk about a Bitcoin world, I do agree in a lot of their descriptions of a post-fiat world, where you're going to have a currency that's not owned by any state, country, whatever embodiment you want to use. It would be owned by no one, but everyone would be able to benefit from it, as far as like having a piece of that system. However, Bitcoin was a step in the right direction. You know, a lot of great work came out of that invention, using cryptography and brilliant moon math, as people like to term it. However, there are some key elements that was missing in the design of these networks. And in the design is the fundamental flaw that these networks didn't predict in their models. Now, I'm not a super math person and can do all of these expert calculations. However, I do understand behaviors. I do understand patterns. And when you create a network like this, you basically create a fundamental similar model and system that is tied to fiat, meaning it will behave just like fiat, but decentralized. And you may say, well, hey, that's better than what we have currently. And I would say, yes, that is true. But however, the timeline isn't, it's a little too late. Like Bitcoin would need to have been created, I would say, I don't know how many years before. Probably around the time when they debased gold, I would assume. And then once they debased it, they should have been like, no. Imagine if you had Bitcoin available then, and it just told the whole nation, everyone is going to get this software, you're going to run it on your computers, and this is going to be the new store of value. And then over time, you know, families would just pass down Bitcoin as far as like the wealth generation. That way you have this quote unquote sound money. And of course, I know computers and, you know, Bitcoin wasn't invented at that time. What I'm saying is that it would have needed to have been invented around that time. And a way for it to just, because that's where that action took place, where the dollar was debased from gold, and, you know, it went into that trajectory. So the models that these current networks are running on, regardless if it's Casper, regardless if it's Bitcoin, Monero, whatever the case may be. And I do think that in some instances there will be different crypto networks that are outside of other networks. But I'm showing why those networks won't have the same exponential growth as Pi network. And I'll get to that in a second. But because these models don't factor in human behavior, the state of what's going on in the social economic part of the world, you miss a lot of nuances that could either, well, not could either, it would fundamental mess up the growth vacuum of the network. And I'll explain what I mean. So in a Bitcoin world, there's no fiat, and it's Bitcoin and Satoshis. And let's say this person is now entering the labor force, quote unquote, to basically know the workforce, get a job. The minute they get in, they have to work for someone else to acquire stats. Think about this. It may seem normal in a sense, but the model begins to behave like fiat, where the individual has to trade their physical labor, their time, which is the most sacred and rarest thing of value in the universe. Time is. So they have to put their labor, their time, all these other factors in order to acquire these sats. Bitcoiners will make the argument, hey, they can mine Bitcoin. But then you have to look at, okay, how much do they have to invest in the hardware in order to mine Bitcoin? And then that even doesn't guarantee that they're going to get rewarded for their work, because the hash rate's difficulty is going to be so high. You're going to need more powerful machines in order to compete with the rest of the miners. So that miner pool starts to get centralized over time. So the issuance of the supply of Bitcoin coming into circulation of this civilization starts to centralize. See how it's now starting to behave like fiat. And then you move on to the next level where, okay, you can buy some Bitcoin out. You can buy some sats. Over time, only people who has a lot of sats will be able to participate and benefit from this system. And that redistribution is basically someone doing labor for someone else. That model isn't sufficient, and we see it now based on fiat. It's not a sufficient model. That's why you get these high levels of inequality that's happening in the health of the network. And this is where Pi Network comes in with a genius model, which is something that Andrew Yang talked about on when he ran for president, universal basic income, but it's done in a more strategic and beneficial way. Humans, your human right has value. So that means every human has value, regardless of whatever social, what's the term we're looking for? Whatever social constructs, meaning like religion, where they was born, all this other stuff, social constructs, whatever social constructs, they have value because they're human. A human dividend. And that means that all value that is created as a collective, as a human collective, as a human species, everyone should benefit from that value. Of course, you're going to have different levels of this percentage of it, but it's done in a way where the floor doesn't start at zero. Because as a person who is now entering Pi civilization, the network pays you because you're human. So think about this. If we're moving to a machine-to-machine economy where machines is going to be doing a lot of the repetitive tasks and work in our world, where do you put more emphasis on value creation? You put it on ideas. That's a mental task. That's something AI can't do yet in the way that humans can. But they definitely can do the physical labor now. So you're going to have a machine-to-machine economy with AI and machines transacting with other machines and humans. The human comes in. I have an idea. And the pie that you're getting from being a human, you can use that pie as a value creator. You can create a business. You can create products, whatever it could be, to use that pie in order to get more pie, to do more things in this civilization. Bitcoin civilization, you have to work for someone else. So they're extracting time for you versus a redistribution of time through the network as a collective, given out to the new participants. That way the floor doesn't start at zero, but they will still have to work. It'll just be a more efficient form of work where it's not tied to working for someone else. You can work for yourself, regardless of how long it takes for this idea to form. It's still valuable. So this is my quick little 15-minute thesis on a post-fiat world where pi is the foundation, because you have to look at this as a digital civilization and time as a currency is so much more valuable than any asset in the world. Pi is tokenized time as a value creation. It's your boy Stacking Pi, and I am out.